Hey guys, welcome back to more Just No Mother-in-Law stories. In today's Ripe Stories video, what would you do if your own family stole the most important thing you owned and then dared you to call the police? My entitled mother-in-law sneaked into our home, swiped my spare key, and handed my car over to her favorite daughter. They smugly told me that I would never get it back. But within 24 hours, the look on their faces changed completely. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one is from r/petty revenge and is titled, "Try to rip me off? Let's get your mother-in-law involved." So I booked a local guy to install new doors in my house during lockdown. I was staying at my sister's place. I thought I was doing him a favor as no one wanted people in their house, so he was lacking work or something. And well, he puts the doors in but does not trim them to fit, so I couldn't close any doors, including the hallway and bathroom door, without them scraping and damaging the floor, and he said he would do that the next week. Well, 4 times he arranged to come back but then didn't show. Eventually I just asked for half my money back as he did technically supply the doors. He promised them delayed, and delayed. Threatening court action got me nowhere. Writing a negative review got me nowhere. Months go by, so my friend and I did some Sherlock Holmes sleuthing, and the friend worked out that we knew this guy's mother-in-law. She was a teacher at our old high school, and one text was all it took. "Sorry, we couldn't resolve this, but small world, I know your mother-in-law. She was my favorite teacher in school. I really should catch up with her." Well, suffice to say, money was hand-delivered through my mailbox within 20 minutes. And yeah, I mentioned it to his mother-in-law anyway. He is divorced now. Probably not my doing, but still funny. And yeah guys, I guess sometimes mother-in-laws can have magical powers, at least in this case. Also, if you still enjoy stories about mother-in-laws, then please don't forget to like the video and maybe even post a comment if you want to support me. Thank you so much. And the next one is the title story from r/justnomother-in-law and is titled, "Entitled mother-in-law stole my car to give it to her golden child daughter because the poor thing needs it more than me." For some background, I'm a guy in my early 30s and I've been married to my wife for a few years now. My wife has an older sister. I'm gonna call her the golden child because that's exactly what she is and has always been. According to my wife and pretty much everyone who has ever met this family, the golden child is the kind of woman who has never once in her life had to face the consequences of her own decisions because mommy is always right there to clean up the mess. Lost her job because she stopped showing up, mom paid her rent, wrecked her credit buying things she couldn't afford, mom co-signed the next thing, you get the picture. My wife on the other hand was basically raised to be the responsible one, the one who got told, "Why can't you just be more understanding of your sister?" And every time, the golden child blew up her own life. So my wife grew up being the family mule and the golden child grew up being the family princess. By the time I came into the picture, my wife had mostly built a wall between herself and her mom. We see the mother-in-law on holidays, we are polite, but my wife keeps her at arm's length, and I never really understood the full extent of why until all of this happened. Now for the car, I need you to understand what this car meant to me, because if you don't, the rest of this won't hit the way it should. I did not grow up with money. My family was the kind of broke where a car was a luxury, not a given. I never got a hand-me-down car at 16, I never got keys with a bow on them on my birthday. Through my late teens and most of my 20s, I either took the bus, bumped rides, or drove some rusted-out thing that I bought for cheap and prayed over every time I turned the key. The heater didn't work, the driver's side window didn't roll down, and one winter the door froze shut and I had to climb in through the passenger side for 2 weeks. So then when my wife and I finally got a stable place financially, the first big thing I did for myself was buy a real car. Not a fancy car, not a luxury thing, just a clean, reliable, newer car that was actually mine, that I picked out, that I signed for. I had been saving and planning for it for a long time, and the day I drove it off the lot, I sat in the parking lot for like 10 minutes just breathing it in. It sounds dumb, but it felt like proof that my life had actually changed. That the broke kid climbing through the passenger door had made it out. My wife understood exactly what it meant to me, which is why she was just as furious as I was when everything went down. The mother-in-law, of course, didn't understand because in her world, a car is just a thing you take from one kid and hand it to another when the favorite one needs it. So here's where it all starts. The golden child, surprise, surprise, had been living off her boyfriend for a couple of years already. The boyfriend owned the apartment they lived in, owned the car they shared, and basically owned everything because she didn't contribute anything. When they broke up and it was an ugly breakup, he kept his stuff because, well, it was his stuff. So suddenly, the golden child found herself with no car, no place of her own, and a job she had to get to that was a decent drive away. This is the part where a normal adult would figure out a plan. Get a cheap car, take rideshares for a bit, ask a friend to work something out, but that is not how this family operates. The second the golden child had a problem, the mother-in-law went into a full crisis mode, except the crisis she landed on solving was not her daughter's lack of transportation. The crisis she decided to solve was the apparent injustice that I, her son-in-law, owned a perfectly good car and was selfishly using it for, my own life. It started with a phone call to my wife. The mother-in-law called and spent about 45 minutes laying it all out, how the golden child was struggling, how she had no way to get to work, how she might lose her job, how the whole family needed to come together. And then she dropped it. She said, and my wife put her on speaker so I heard this directly, "Doesn't your husband work from home? He barely even uses that car. It would be the perfect thing for your sister to use for a few months while she gets back on her feet. You should really give her that car." I want to be clear that I do work from home. That part is true. But barely uses the car is a wild thing to say about a person who uses his car to do the groceries, run errands, visit friends, go to appointments, and basically live his life like an adult human being. The amount of driving I do is irrelevant anyway. I mean, it is my car. The whole "you barely use it" thing is just the opening move people make, by the way, when they are trying to talk you out of something that belongs to you. My wife shut it down immediately, though. She told her mom flat out, that is not our car to give, it is his, aka mine. He bought it himself, and we are not having this conversation. The mother-in-law acted all wounded and said that she thought family helped family and got off the phone in a huff. I figured that was the end of it, I really did. I told my wife, hey, your mom's gonna pout for a week and then move on, she always does. My wife gave me this look, just this tired knowing look, and she said, you don't know my mother. And sadly, she was right. I didn't. Over the next week or so, the pressure campaign started. My mother-in-law called my wife almost every day. The golden child, who I think had spoken to me directly maybe a dozen times in the entire time I'd known her, suddenly started texting me. Long paragraphs about how hard things were, how she had nobody else, how I was the only one in the family who could help her, and how she would pay for everything, gas, insurance, whatever I wanted, and she even offered to help make my car payments for the months she would have it. And look, on paper, an offer to make payments doesn't sound too insane, but here's the thing that nobody on their side wanted to acknowledge. I didn't want money. I was not trying to rent out my car. I wanted my car, the thing I had waited my whole life for, to stay in my possession and be driven by me. That's it. That's not a negotiation. There's no number you can put on the table that makes me okay with someone else driving the first nice thing I ever owned for myself, especially someone who has a documented history of trashing everything that comes into her life. I told them no, politely at first, then less politely as they kept pushing. My wife told them no. We were a united front every single time the answer was no. The mother-in-law's tone slowly shifted from sweet to nasty. The last real conversation we had before everything blew up, she actually said to me, I never thought you would be this selfish. Your sister-in-law is suffering and you're worried about a car. And I said calmly, she's not my sister-in-law because we are close. She's my sister-in-law because I married her sister, and yeah, I'm worried about my car because it's mine. If she's suffering so much, why don't you give her your car? There was dead silence. Because, of course, the mother-in-law had a car too, a nicer one than mine actually, but it never even occurred to her to part with her own things. The whole plan from the beginning was to make sure the sacrifice came from the person she cared about the least, which was me. She hung up on me, and again, I thought, okay, that's it, it's done, they can be mad, but there's nothing they can actually do. Here's where I have to tell you about the spare key, because it's the thing that makes the rest of this possible. We live in a fairly rural area. My wife and I share a house, and like a lot of couples, we kept our spare keys in one of those little hook organizers by the door. Standard stuff, you know. The mother-in-law had been to our house plenty of times and she knew exactly where things were. And yeah, this is important, and she still had a key to our house because a while back during a stretch when both of us were traveling for work, my wife had given her mom a key to come water the plants and check on the place. We just never got it back, and honestly, we forgot she even had it. Why would we think about it? I mean, she was family. But one morning I wake up and my wife had already left to go meet a friend, and I go to make coffee and I notice the house feels weird. The kind of weird where something is off but you cannot put your finger on it, and then I look at the key hook. My spare car key is gone. My stomach just dropped. I went out to the garage, yanked the door up, and my car was gone. There was just an empty oil stain on the concrete where it should have been. My wife's car was still in the driveway though, untouched. Just mine was gone. For a second I genuinely thought it was a regular theft, like somebody broke in and stole the car, but then my brain caught up. The spare key, the mother-in-law house key, the conversation, the whole week of pressure, and I just knew exactly what happened. She would let herself into my house, taken my spare key off the hook and driven my car away to give it to her precious golden child. That is what I think happened. I called my wife first. I was so worked up, I could barely talk. My wife went silent for a second and then said this thing that I will never forget. She said, "Oh my god, she actually did it. I didn't even think she would actually do it." Then I called mother-in-law. She picked up on like the fourth ring, all calm and breezy. "Oh, good morning," I said. "Where is my car?" And she goes, in this totally relaxed voice like she was telling me about the weather, "Now don't get all worked up. Your sister-in-law needed it more than you do, and you were not being reasonable, so I made the decision for the family. She's on her way to get it situated. You will get it back eventually. This is what family does for each other." I want you all to understand that I've never in my life felt rage like that. It was not even hot rage, it went past hot, it went cold. I got very quiet and I said, "You broke into my house and stole my car." "Ha, don't be so dramatic. I have a key. It is not breaking in and it's not stealing. It's just family helping family. You will thank me later when you realize how petty you were being." I told her I was gonna report the car as stolen, name her as the person who took it. And she said, and this is verbatim by the way, "You wouldn't dare. You would be reporting your own family to the police. Imagine what that would do." And yeah guys, by the way, just to quickly interject here, in this situation, if you were in OP's shoes, would you have reported your mother-in-law to the police? Honestly, given the circumstances OP is in, I definitely would have done the same. Let me know what you would have done in the comments. She further said, "Your wife would never forgive you. The whole family knows what kind of person you really are." And then she hung up on me again. So here's the thing she didn't count on. She thought the threat of splitting the family would freeze me. She thought I would be so scared of being the bad guy that I would just eat it. And if my wife had been on her side, maybe that would have worked, but my wife was not on her side, not even a little. When my wife got home, she was practically vibrating. She had already been on the phone with her sister, who had the absolute nerve to be smug about it. The golden child said something like, "Mom already handled it. You guys were being so dramatic. I'll get it back to you whenever I'm done with it." Whenever she's done with it. Like my car was a library book or something. My wife sat me down at the kitchen table and she said something that honestly made me fall in love with her all over again. She said, "I've spent my whole life letting them run me over so the family wouldn't blow up. I'm not doing it anymore. Not with you, not with your car. We are getting it back and we're gonna make sure she never ever does this again." So we made a plan, and here's the part I'm actually a little proud of because we did it smart instead of just losing our minds. First thing, the car had one of those built-in connected services, the kind where you can see the location of the vehicle from an app on your phone. I had set it up when I first got the car and completely forgotten about it. We pulled it up and sure enough, there was my car parked at the golden child's place a couple hours away. So now we had its exact location and a time-stamped record showing it sitting at her address. That was going to matter. The second thing, I went around the house and I found the evidence of how she got in. We have a camera on our front porch. It's not a fancy security system, just one of those doorbell cameras. And in all her confidence, the mother-in-law had walked right up to my front door that morning, let herself in with her key, and walked back out a few minutes later with my spare key in her hand. Clear as day, time-stamped, her face, her car in the background, the whole thing. I sat there watching the footage of this woman strolling into my home like she owned it, and any tiny shred of guilt I had about involving the police on family just evaporated. She was not family in that moment, she was a person who had broken into my house and stolen the most important thing I owned. But here's where my wife made the call that I think is the reason this whole thing landed the way it did. She said, before we go nuclear, give them one chance, on the record, in writing. She was right, we were not gonna threaten and bluster and get into a screaming match, we were just gonna lay out the facts, give them a deadline, and let them choose. So I sent one text to the mother-in-law and the golden child, both on the same message. I kept it short and I kept it cold. I wrote something like, you entered my home without permission and took my vehicle. I have it on camera and I have the GPS location of my car at her address. I want the car returned to my driveway undamaged within 24 hours. If it is not back by then, I will report it stolen to the police and provide them with everything. This is the only message you will get. Your choice. Sent. The response was immediate and it was exactly what you would expect. The mother-in-law called my wife, not me, because she still thought she could get to my wife the way she had her whole life. She was screaming and my wife put it on speaker. The mother-in-law was going on about how dare I threaten the family, how dare I treat her like a criminal, and how she was just trying to help and how my wife needed to control her husband. And my wife, calm as anything, said, he's not threatening the family, mom. He's responding to a crime. You stole his car, you stole it, and if you don't give it back, I'll be standing right next to him at the police station, and I'll be the one handing them the video of you walking into our house. And well, the mother-in-law went quiet. I think that was the first moment it actually registered that her golden card, the threat of tearing the family apart, was not gonna work here because the daughter she had always counted on to fold was not folding anymore. My wife was choosing me out loud and it broke the mother-in-law's strategy in half. She tried a different angle, she got all teary-eyed and said, after everything I've done for you, after everything I've sacrificed, this is how you treat your mother. And my wife said, everything you've done for me? Mom, you've spent my whole life doing things for her and telling me to be understanding. The car comes back tomorrow or we will call the police, that's it. And she hung up on her own mom. For me, I've never been more in love with anyone. Now, here's where the golden child entered the conversation though and showed her whole entire personality. She texted me directly. And instead of, the smart move, which would have been to just quietly return the car and avoid criminal charges, she went on the attack. She sent paragraphs, she told me I was a selfish little man, that I'd married into a real family and didn't know how real families worked, and that she was going through the hardest time of her life and I cared more about a hunk of metal than a human being. She said she was not done with the car yet and that she would give it back when she found something else. She told me I should be ashamed of myself, and then she made her big mistake. She got cocky and wrote, and I screenshotted this, she wrote, good luck getting it back. Possession is 9/10 of the law. It's at my place now, and mom gave it to me. You're not getting it until I'm done with it. Go ahead and call the cops. They're not gonna take your car away from a single woman over some family drama. They will laugh at you. I just stared at that message because she had in writing admitted she had my car, admitted she intended to keep it against my will, and basically dared me to do something about it. Well, dear reader, I did something about it. The 24 hours came and went and the car didn't come back, and the GPS still showed it parked at her place. So the next morning, my wife and I went down to the police station together. The officer I talked to looked through everything and his face just kind of changed as he read the texts. He looked up at me and said something like, so she put in writing that she has your vehicle and is refusing to return it? I said yes. He kind of shook his head and it wasn't family drama to him. It was a clear case of a vehicle that legally belonged to one person being taken and held by another with a paper trail a mile long. The car was mine, full stop, and they had it, and the police contacted the golden child, and this is the part I really wish I could have seen in person. According to what got back to us, when an actual officer called the golden child and explained that she was in possession of a vehicle that had been reported and that she needed to return it immediately or face being charged, all that possession is 9/10 of the law, they will laugh at you confidence evaporated on the spot. She panicked and she started crying on the phone, saying it was all a misunderstanding and that her mom told her it was fine, that she didn't steal anything. The officer was apparently very unmoved by all of it. The car was back in my driveway soon after. I drove down with my wife and a friend so I could bring it home, and when I got there, the golden child would not even come outside. She watched from her window. The whole thing took like 5 minutes. I checked the car over and it was fine actually. But now for the family fallout. My mother-in-law went absolutely scorched earth on us in the group chat and on the phone for the first week. She said that we were ungrateful, we were heartless, and we had criminalized a grieving woman. We had humiliated the family. She kept trying to get my wife alone, calling her when she figured I would be busy, sending her these long voice messages about how a daughter shouldn't choose a man over her own mother, and every single time my wife held the line, she told her mom plain as day, "You committed a crime against my husband in our home. I'm not gonna pretend you didn't because you're my mother. If you want a relationship with me, you will apologize to him, you will give back the key to our house, and you will never ever pull something like this again. Until then, we are done." The key thing actually mattered. We had the locks changed the same week, by the way, and well, the second we got the car back, but my wife still demanded the key back on principle, and the fact that the mother-in-law dragged her feet about even giving back a now useless key told you everything about how sorry she actually was. She was not sorry, she was furious that it hadn't worked. The golden child, for her part though, never really apologized either. She blocked me, blocked my wife, and last we heard she had somehow turned the whole thing into a story where she was the victim of her cold-hearted sister and brother-in-law who let her rot without a car during the worst time of her life, which again ignores the small detail that she had options the entire time and chose to steal my car instead. She ended up, get this, taking out a loan and buying a cheap used car within about 2 weeks of all of this. 2 weeks, that's how impossible the situation actually was for her. She could have done that from day one, she just didn't want to, because why solve your own problem when you can take someone else's solution, right? The criminal side of things though, I will keep brief because I know it's not the fun part. I had every right to press it all the way, and believe me, I was tempted. But after a lot of talking, my wife and I decided that once we had the car back undamaged enough and we had everything documented, we would let the legal pressure stand as the deterrent rather than dragging it out for months. The point was made, the police had their report on file, both of them knew that if either of them so much as looked at my car wrong again, there was a paper trail ready to go. My wife actually framed it perfectly. She said, "We don't need to destroy them. We just need them to know that we could." And that knowledge has kept them very far away from my property ever since. It's been about a month now, and here's where things stand. My wife and her mom are not speaking, and honestly, my wife seems lighter than I've ever seen her. She told me the other night that she had spent her whole life waiting for permission to stop letting her family use her, and that this whole horrible thing was actually the thing that finally gave her that permission. And yeah guys, if you ask me, the mother-in-law never really wanted to solve a transportation problem. That's not what this was about. She wanted to redistribute someone else's resources to her favorite golden child without it costing her anything personally. The moment it was pointed out that she had an equally valid solution that involved her own sacrifice, she basically had nothing. There was no response, she just hung up, at least according to OP, because the whole plan, at least in my opinion, from the very first phone call, was to make the discomfort land on the person she valued the least. I really feel bad for OP, I gotta say. And the next one is a comment from Reddit which said, "Let's be clear here, what your mother-in-law did was theft. Walking into your house, taking your spare key and handing your car to someone else is not family helping family. That is simply insane. Your sister-in-law also made it worse by texting you that she was not giving it back and acting like possession is 9/10 of the law, like it was some kind of magic spell." That being said though, I do think the situation escalated because everyone involved was already operating from years of resentment. You were absolutely within your rights to go to the police, but I'm not sure the 24-hour warning text was ever gonna calm things down. It was probably necessary legally, but emotionally it just poured gasoline on an already burning dumpster. The dumpster being the mother-in-law. And another comment from Reddit said, "Look, mother-in-law 100% crossed a massive line stealing the car. That is straight up theft, no matter how you spin the family helps family crap. Golden child is a walking disaster who refuses to adult, but OP, you and your wife went full nuclear with the police report and the 'never speak to us again' ultimatum when the car came back undamaged. A calm 'return it or we are done' would have been enough. Everyone here escalated in an unnecessary way. This whole thing was preventable if anyone had boundaries earlier." And yeah guys, let me know what you think about this in the comments. I'm very curious to hear your opinion. And the next one is a malicious compliance story which is titled, "You hang up. No, you. Someday I will be a saint, but today is not that day." So I just heard an agent give my 80-year-old father-in-law a very hard time about canceling home phone service. She wanted to upsell services, etc. and get personal information she didn't need to complicate what was supposed to be an easy request. It went on for a while like this. I finally stepped in and shut that down, confirmed the cancellation, and handed the phone back to him and walked away. The agent insisted it was nothing personal, just company policy to engage in customer retention efforts, and he moved across country. He told her that there's no retention possible, but still, she kept him going in circles unnecessarily. I can hear the agent now begging him to hang up from the other room. This call agent cannot end the call though. Company policy is that the customer ends the call, and my father-in-law cannot hear her as he and my mother-in-law are happily chatting away about elderly bodily functions and peanut butter crackers with apples, while this poor agent is literally begging them to end the call. I will not end her nightmare. And yeah guys, if you enjoy peanut butter and crackers and an apple for lunch, let me know in the comments and I will see you again tomorrow.